Hey there, you're listening to episode 346 of Better Than Before Breast Cancer. I'm your host, Laura Lummer, and I'm so excited to bring you today's episode. So, let me give you a little bit of history. A couple of weeks ago, I was working on a project I can't give you the details of yet, but it's coming out in a couple of weeks and I'll share everything then. But while working on this project, I met a remarkable group of people. And two of those people you're going to hear from today. One of them is a young man, Michael Cramer, and his mom, Ashlee. And I'm going to tell you all about them in just a minute, but they were Michael was remarkable. I met his mom after we kind of finished up the project, and he was just so insightful. It's just amazing to me what the experience of cancer can do. And I mean, I don't think it makes a new person, but he was already such a remarkable human being, I'm sure. And just to listen to his wisdom and insight, he was just such a great guy. And then to meet his mom, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So when I met his mom, we started talking. I said, we should do a podcast episode for Mother's Day because she's a mom of a child with cancer, because I have cancer and I have a mom who's still alive that I think about and worry about. And there's so much energy, such a dynamic between kids who have cancer, whether you're a young person or an adult person like myself, and moms. And am I a mom with cancer? Or are you a mom who loves someone with cancer? So many different stories in our head, so many different experiences. And I thought if we could all just have a conversation about our different perspectives and how each of us see the experience that we're going through and what we think for each other, what we think about when it comes to each other, that it would be really a cool thing to do. I mean, you've had a diagnosis of breast cancer, so you're someone's child. Maybe you're someone's mom. Maybe you're someone's sister. And in each of those roles, there's a different persona, right? We play different roles in different people's lives, and we have different stories about each of those roles. And we're going to talk about that today on the podcast as well, and how we approach those different roles. I think that we can go with societal conditioning. And if we do that, we can end up with a lot of guilt, a lot of worry, a lot of unsureness, and maybe feelings of lack of confidence, and really just being alone. Cancer can be a really lonely experience, and you may be having thoughts or feelings that you think only you are having, right? That you're the only one that feels this way, and you may not know what to do with them. So I am so excited to share this conversation with you because I think that it's going to be super helpful. And I think that the more we hear what other people are going through in after a diagnosis, whether we're not talking specifically about breast cancer today, just the experience of being loved and being in a family and being someone with cancer or loving someone with cancer. And I think it's going to resonate with a lot of you so that hopefully you don't feel so alone in your experience. And maybe it gives you some ideas and some inspiration on how to deal with some of the thoughts that you have. So let me just introduce you to Michael and Ashlee, aka Mom. Michael Cramer is a 22-year-old cancer survivor, bone marrow transplant recipient, a social media influencer, and a motivational hero. So, quick flashback. Michael was born in Paris. He grew up in Miami. He was a surfer, a skater on the Olympic development team for windsurfing. And Ashlee, his mom, was a dancer who turned early childhood educator. In 2014, her husband was diagnosed with large B-cell lymphoma, and she became the sole source of income, the caregiver for her husband, and the mom and dad to their 3 children. Tragically, her husband died in 2016, but this only brought the family closer. July 14th, 2020, heartbreak hit again. And Michael was diagnosed with an insanely rare and aggressive cancer called hepatosplenic T-cell lymphoma. Less than 200 documented cases ever. And the average survival, 8 months. Ashlee quit her job to be with Michael full-time, and miraculously, thank God, 3 years later, Michael is alive. He's been through chemo, radiation, bone marrow transplant, near fatal graft versus host disease, also called GVHD. He's been through hospital admissions for gastroparesis, liver failure, avascular necrosis, and the list goes on. And through it all, Ashlee has never left his side, and their relationship became an unbreakable bond. Together, the two of them have taken this heartbreaking experience and found beauty in pain. And that's their theme. That and love. The journey of Michael's cancer became a story to share and a purpose to fulfill. And the mother and son started a podcast called Michael and Mom Talk Cancer. And soon after, a website, a blog, YouTube videos. They use social media to update and inspire. And now they're sharing their inspirational perspective through motivational speaking. Michael is still in treatment for complications from his cancer and bone marrow transplant, but he's alive and in remission. And Michael and Ashlee speak together, doing all they can to fulfill their purpose of love and connection, not only with the cancer community, but with anyone who needs inspiration and motivation. And so I feel really, really honored to get to share their love, their connection, their inspiration, and their motivation with you on this show in this month of Mother's Celebration, this month of mental health support, and just another tool in your toolbox that you can draw on to know that this experience is something that when you reach out to community, there are going to be people there to support you, and you don't have to. And I highly recommend you never do it alone. So, without any further ado, please enjoy this conversation with Michael and Ashlee. So, hello, Ashlee, Mom, and Michael. I'm really so happy to have you guys here. Like, this is such a big treat because you guys are just awesome people. And I was so thrilled to be able to meet you and now to get to share your message on the podcast. So, thank you so much for making the time to do this.
Thank you. This is an honor. We love you.
Yeah, thank you for
I
having
love
me.
you too.
I'm excited.
We met
I'm
you. I
excited.
love with you.
Yeah.
It was easy.
That's easy. We talked about when we met doing a project that we can't talk about yet, but we talked about like we should do a show and talk about the impact of cancer from the perspective of being a mom with cancer, a mom who has a child with cancer, a child who's got cancer, and thinking about the mom, right? Like it's so multifaceted, our relationships and how cancer impacts our relationships. And so I really want to dig into it because I think that, well, I know that a lot of people who have cancer, a lot of clients I work with, we want to keep this mask of normalcy, whatever the hell that is, and not like be real about what we're going through. They feel guilty. They don't want to worry people, all the things, as you guys well know. So I think that talking about really happens and letting people know that sometimes it's a shit show. Like, it's okay. Right. And I think it's important to talk about like we don't have to pretend stuff is normal because it's not normal anymore. Right. I mean, not normal in the sense that we thought about it. So I did an introduction for you
It
guys,
is.
but I want to hear from you. Like,
I think
share us your story and like why you decided that this super personal, challenging, I don't know, journey in life was something you wanted to share and why. I'd love to
I
hear you.
want Michael to like tell the story, but
Mhm.
I just have to chime in what you said about normalcy because literally the other day I was texting with a mom that's going through a lot. And she asked me something, and I said, well, it's just, she asked me something about Michael, his treatment. And I said, it's become normal for us. And she was like, Ashlee, there is nothing about this that is normal. And I was like, you're right. And I thought that that was a good point for us to remember that even though we adapt, even though we do everything to make our life good, it is not normal. And so it is okay to have those moments of anxiety or stress or whatever it is, and all of those feelings that you were just talking about, and the multifaceted, there's so many layers to this. So I just had to touch on that. And now I want Michael,
Yeah,
tell the
love
story.
it.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
okay.
totally agree with everything you were saying, but the truth is sometimes it does feel normal, and I guess it's
Yeah.
not normal, but it becomes a new normal, like we've said a million times, and I think everyone
Yeah.
with cancer always says it's a new normal.
Yeah.
And
Like what's the normal is like perfect. Like both of those words should be just scratched out. Like what the hell do they mean?
nothing is
What is it?
even
It's
a
true.
normal life is a normal. Everyone has unique experiences. So
It's
there's
so
the
true.
definition of normal. It's just like a weird word. And I guess
Yeah.
normal is your own form of things when you get used to it and comfortable. So right now, this is our normal. So whatever. Anyways,
Right.
we can talk about normal and debate what it means and all that forever. But let me tell you a little bit about me and how we got here to be on this podcast.
Mhm.
So when I was 19 years old, I was feeling really tired. It was COVID. I was home from college and I was at home. And the biggest part about being home for me, it was that everything was closed. So the
Mm.
gyms were closed, the beaches were closed, the schools were closed. And for months, well, for months, I say, for the first month of March and April, I was really tired. And at first, it wasn't that bad. It was just like, okay, I'm just fatigued. Like, it's nothing crazy. I'm gonna be fine. I'm not doing the things I used to do. So I'm just like kind of out of it.
COVID lockdown.
I'm not in my normal state, I'm
Yeah.
just like there, I'm not feeling normal. And then it was around, June really that I was like, something's really up because I started to develop night sweats. And then I started to develop some fevers. And that was when I knew there was kind of a problem. And at the time, we thought that I was anemic. We had no idea what was going on.
Thought he
And
had COVID actually.
thought I had
Oh,
COVID.
It was
yeah.
so hard to get tested then. I
Yeah.
thought,
And my symptoms honestly were not extremely severe. So this is why I didn't ever think it was something crazy because I didn't have to be hospitalized before my diagnosis. I was okay. Like I could get up and eat and function and then live a normal day, but I was just more tired than usual. And my mom and I decided after I had some fevers for like a few days and I just got sick and it kind of wasn't getting much better. Like the fever would go away and then it would kind of would come back a week later. And we were like, okay, let's meet with our family pediatrician. So we went and we met with her and we did some blood work. And she looked at me and she was like, you know what, you look good. You look fine. Like, I'll call you in a few days when the blood work is back and we'll talk then. And she called us and she told us that we needed to go see a specialist that she knew at Nicholas Children's Hospital. And when she told us that, I still was just like, okay, like I think I'm anemic. Like I must be anemic. This is just anemia. I'm gonna get some iron pills or maybe even a blood transfusion. Because I Googled that and I was like, oh man, I might get a blood transfusion. That sounds so scary. I don't want to be anemic. And then we get to the hospital, the doctor does some blood work, and I didn't even notice, but we were in a hematology and oncology doctor's office. And I wasn't thinking anything,
Mhm.
No, my
Yeah.
father went through cancer. I didn't know it too well because I was younger. I was in school. My mom was the one mainly taking care of him. And when I got there, he did blood work and it came back and he was not impressed at all. And he asked us to spend the night in the
oh,
hospital.
he was very impressed.
I mean, he was very impressed in the terms like, this is crazy. It was not
Yeah.
good. It was just not good. And the next day we came in, we didn't spend the night. And I did a bone marrow biopsy. And then boom, he told me I had leukemia or lymphoma, admitted to the hospital, a week stay. I had a port placed in. They were going to start chemo, but they couldn't figure out my diagnosis. So they discharged me. And then 3 weeks later, on August 3rd of 2020, I was diagnosed with hepatosplenic T-cell lymphoma. So a cancer that has a 15% chance of survival, usually 8 months to live. I was very fortunate that my doctors like somehow got the right mix of chemo and made a perfect regimen somehow based off research.
Because there is no protocol for
And
this cancer, actually.
yeah, and I guess it helped that I was younger because I could tolerate more harsh chemos.
Yeah.
As when you're older and given a diagnosis like this, it's more of like more fatal, I think. But because I was younger, you can get more chemo, you can get all the intense ones. That's why the pediatric treatment is the most intense because your organs are healthier and they can sustain more. And that was my case, thankfully. And I ended up doing 3 rounds of chemo that were short but very intense. And then I had a bone marrow transplant a few months after my diagnosis. We spent a month and a half in the hospital for that. And then we were right back in the hospital because I developed graft versus host disease, which is what I live with now.
Mm.
And the first 2 years after the diagnosis of graft versus host disease, my mom and I, we were living in the hospital. I developed so many complications. The graft versus host disease attacked my liver, my skin, my GI, my mouth. And it was a very hard time. And I still live with it. I'm still in treatment for it. It's not over. And we just decided that this sucks. Like, this sucks, but we have to do something to make it positive.
Yeah.
We decided to start doing social media, a podcast, speaking, webinars, all these things. And we decided to turn something that was so not fun into something as fun as we could.
Yeah.
And
Like you.
yeah,
I mean, not, Michael said turn into something positive. I'm sure a lot of cancer survivors and patients, sometimes we hear all the time, just be positive.
Mm.
And think, gosh, are you saying that I got cancer because I was negative? And I think
Right.
that's a little bit hard, but it wasn't so much about being positive. It was about having a purpose. And I
Mhm.
think when you have a purpose, it brings you a kind of peace and joy with what you're going through.
Yeah.
And it's, there's a bunch of things he didn't say. Like he was an athlete when he was diagnosed. He was
Right.
on the Olympic development team for windsurfing. He had a healthy diet. He had been going to the gym. So there are a lot of things that he was, I think, trying to get through that story quickly. But there are a lot of things like we checked all the boxes for someone healthy. And he did touch on the fact that, yeah, my husband passed away 4 years before Michael was diagnosed. He had a treatable cancer, the opposite of Michael. He had a more a normal,
A
like
normal cancer.
a
Yeah.
normal, one of the good ones. He had the good cancer. Like we
Good
hate them.
cancer.
He had the good cancer, and he ended up passing away.
So
And
sorry.
I think it taught us a lot.
Yeah.
And grateful that Michael is here.
Yeah, of
It's true.
course.
It's become a huge purpose for us, but it did happen organically. I don't feel like we went consciously, okay, you're going through this. Let's start posting on social media.
No.
It sort of happened very organically, is that we made a few posts. And as you said, right before we started recording, that you did the episode of a show and you are worried about comments being negative. When we started sharing comments and people reaching out were so kind that it
Mhm.
encouraged us that, you know what? Maybe this is helping people. And so we just, it became the good kind of roller coaster of
Yeah.
let's keep sharing this story. It seems to be helping people. And then when you share more, you feel more comfortable sharing. And then you realize you're impacting people. And it has become a really big purpose for both of us. Uh,
Mhm.
so yeah,
Yeah.
it's not over. As Michael said, he's still in
Right.
treatment, but he's stable.
Yeah.
We're not in and out of the hospital, in and out of treatment, but not in and out of the hospital.
Being admitted. We're in and out of the hospital.
Yeah.
I have to go to the hospital tomorrow we have to go to the hospital tomorrow for just a checkup, but we're there like 2 times a week, every week
Yeah.
usually. But we're
Yeah.
not admitted, so I haven't been admitted since my knee replacement I had a few months ago, but that's another story.
Another
But I
complication.
think that's an important thing, right? Because you're considered to be in remission. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, I am in
And
remission.
so, for anyone who's had cancer, we're considered to be in remission. But being in remission and having no evidence of disease are two very different things,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's part of the struggle for people with cancer is that we're so used to the mindset that you get a cold, you get better, you get a flu, you get better, you break a bone, you get better. You get cancer and you might be in remission, or you might just be living with it in your body. But does it really ever just it's not completely gone? Like, you can't undo the surgeries, the chemotherapies, what they've done to the tissues of the body. It never really goes back to the same before. And so I wanna ask you, Ashley, because this is really important. I deal obviously with, breast cancer survivors,
Right.
and many are moms, right? And so they are caregivers, right? And they
Yeah.
see themselves as caregivers. And now you are a caregiver for your husband, you're a caregiver for your son, you give support. And so, as someone who's a caregiver and they're dealing with cancer, oftentimes, I mean, I think women a lot of times like their own self care is not even on the table most of the time. And then if they have children, it's not even in the room. And so, but it has to be when they have cancer. So, as a caregiver, as a mom, how do you balance that? And what do you want to tell people? It's like, how do you take care of yourself when you're going through it? I'm worried and I want to help and I want to be supportive and all the things.
How do you, Mom?
Yeah.
He's making fun of me because it is so balance is so funny. Michael's bone marrow transplant doctor, his theme is balance. And it's so funny. He's a male. And some of the female nurses would be like, we hate when he says balance because we understand. They're
Yeah.
not exactly balance. There is give and take. I don't really think that, we can try to balance things, but even before cancer, I feel like for moms, I would say to them, don't stress. Some days your kids are going to be number one. There's going to be days if you work that you might have to spend a little bit more time with work, and that is okay. So sometimes you balance by giving and taking, right?
Mhm.
And as far as balancing with cancer, gosh, I don't think it's trying to balance, but I think it's trying to find like moments, even if they're brief, moments of taking care of yourself, because I think caregivers forget they have to breathe, they
Yeah.
have to eat, they
Yeah.
have to sleep in order to survive, because you can miss all of those for a short amount of time, but not long term. And cancer is long term, right? Most of the time. So it's a
Right.
long thing. It's not just a flu. So for 1 week, I'm going to sit up with my kid all night. It's not 1 week. So I think it's long. And even if you're going through like a good cancer and you go through 5 rounds of chemo and you're in remission, it's still long.
Yeah.
So I think that I've said this before,
Well,
so
just to
don't
clarify,
get,
so people don't get mad, she didn't mean good cancer like there is a good cancer. She was
no.
saying there are
I,
no good
Yeah, I'm
cancers.
saying there are
right.
no
'Cause I know people
cancers.
get offended, but I'm just saying we
Yeah.
don't think there's
A
any good.
less rare cancer, let's just say, or one that's more common.
No, we're saying there are no good
Let's
cancers.
just
Yeah,
yeah,
there's no good.
We've seen the good ones go wrong and the bad ones
Yeah.
go. There's no good cancer. They're
yeah,
all
cancer
equally hard.
sucks.
Right.
But Michael's heard me say this, so don't get mad. Everyone knows the analogy of the oxygen mask. And, I have actually heard in caregiver groups, they're like, don't forget the oxygen mask, put it on yourself and then put it on the person you're caring for. And I'm going to tell you what I truly believe is that the caregivers I know, we will never put it on ourselves first. We will always put it on the person we love that we're caring for. But my advice is when you put it on them, don't forget to put it on yourself. Even if it's after, you still have to
Mm-hmm.
put it on yourself. You still have to breathe. And I think that that is an analogy I can live with, because it is true. We'll do anything for the ones we care for. And, I did care for my husband and caring for my child, and both scenarios are hard. There is something with your child that you're like, I'm supposed to protect them and
For
outlook.
sure.
With
Yeah.
my husband, it was similar, but I was also thinking I have to protect my children from what my husband is going through. So it is like it's a different scenario. But
Yeah.
the advice is whatever it is, like find something. And also like it is okay not to be okay 24/7, because you can't be. I have a sweet caregiver group that I lead, a support group once a week. And literally this past weekend we were talking about it. One of the caregivers was like, I can't lose it, because if I lose it, I'm never going to come back. I'm like, yes, you are. You can go in the
Yes.
shower and you can cry, and then you can walk back in the room, and you're not going to cry forever.
Yeah.
It's be okay. And it's okay not to be okay. You
Yeah.
don't
And that's a
stay.
really common belief, actually. I hear that all the time.
Yeah,
Because I
nowadays
like, yeah,
I
what's
think
that?
nowadays you hear it's okay not to be okay a lot.
No, but I
Yeah.
think what we're saying is
Oh,
what we hear from caregivers
oh, the
is
caregivers.
we're afraid that if we give in to our grief, our
Hmm.
pain, our crying, our
Okay, that you'll
suffering,
never get out of it.
yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
we do talk about
Yes.
that a lot.
And I think
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the opposite. It
Mhm.
really is the opposite. Like I think you
it gets better when
need,
you let it out.
yeah, you need to
Exactly.
let it out
Yeah,
so you can
I
make
mean it's like it's
space for the
therapy.
joy.
Yeah.
It's
It's part
like
of the healing process, right? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
It's
because I hear that, and it's like part of the healing is like letting go of negative emotions, processing your emotions, allowing yourself to feel. And if you're holding on to, I can't let go, or and you think about like really think about that. Have you ever known anybody who never stopped crying forever? I mean,
no,
no, come on, that's not going to happen, right?
not.
Yeah.
It's
But you know
not.
what, Michael? So I want to hear from you. So I have a mom. My mom is still alive. And in the experience, maybe it's been like 12 years ago now, 13 years ago, my oldest son was in a near-death car accident. And every day I would visit him in the hospital. He was in the hospital for over a month, many, many surgeries. And I'd go up that elevator, and I remembered thinking, because it was after my brother had died, and I remembered thinking how lucky I was because my mom had to go up that elevator. My brother died in the hospital, had to go up that elevator knowing she was never going to bring her son home. I'm going to cry now. Okay. So when I was diagnosed, I thought, I don't want my mom to have to see someone else die. I don't want her to lose a kid. I don't want to be that kid that makes my mom go through that again. Now, obviously, we don't have a lot of control over that, but mom, your mom worries and your mom's your caregiver and she does all this stuff. What do you think? Are there some times where you want to say, like, mom, go to the freaking spa, like, chill? Like, what are your thoughts from your perspective on your mom?
Yes, I wish she would do that, but the thing is, the way she takes care of herself is also to help others. And that's one thing I've learned about her is that she always says, best way to make yourself happy. What do you say exactly? It's the best way to help yourself is to help others. And I feel like she just loves helping others and doing what she does. And I wish she would take care of herself a little more and have like a nice spa day
Yeah.
because we did get her a massage and she never used it for Christmas. Christmas?
See?
No, your birthday. I forget because we try to do something for every time there's like an occasion for her and then it's helpless. She's like her mom. Like my grandma is a similar way, like you can't get her anything. She just but very wholesome and I love it. But
Yeah.
it's hard for her to take care of herself. There was a time when we were in the hospital that we had to force her to there was a massage chair in the hospital and we forced her to go in it one day.
The nurse.
The nurses, but whatever makes her happy. And what makes her
Yeah.
happy is to be with me and do what we do. So I can't be mad at her. And I love that
Yeah.
she takes care of me.
Yeah. I love that. Well, we were talking about Ashley, before we started recording, we were saying you had posted something that was talking about feeling joy and feeling sadness at the same time. And I think it's an interesting perspective. Like looking at you from the outside, Michael might say, Mom, you need a break. You need to, relax. You're too stressed. And you might be feeling, I'm not stressed. I'm doing what I love, but it looks stressful, right? We have all these different perspectives. And at the same time, yeah, we might be feeling stressed at the same time when we're feeling happy. And
Yeah.
you did a post about that. And I talk about that all the time. Like we could feel all the feelings, right?
Yeah.
So tell me, let's hear your insights, both you guys, on that. I'm sure, we all have moments where it's like, I'm happy and things suck at the same time, right?
I
I
think all the time.
All the
It's
time.
it's weird. There's moments, like I said, like where you go into funks for days, weeks, whatever. I feel like right now I'm a little bit in a funk myself, dealing with a lot of just like anxiety, and this just happens sometimes to me. But there's always like
it happens
some
because he's been through a lot. And there's moments I'm sure you
yeah,
can relate that he's processing more and he's like, oh my God.
yeah, there's like a grateful to be alive, but mad at like the side effects. There's
Yeah.
like have both. You can be like, because when people tell
Yes.
me like, oh my God, I've heard this a lot of times, and this really bothers me. People say, you've been through cancer, nothing else can be challenging for you in life because you've been through the hardest thing already. And I've heard that a lot. And it just
Yeah.
makes me mad. I'm like, I feel like going through cancer, it gives you a different type of mindset, but also makes things even, I think, even harder in a way after because there's so much like there's so much depth to you, and I feel like so much more sensitive. I was already sensitive, but now after cancer, I'm such a sensitive person, and I feel like I just have so many emotions now that I've been through so much that like,
Yeah.
but it's beautiful because I have these emotions and I have all these things and I have a good family and I have my mom. But like you said, there's joy and there's grief as well at the same time.
Yeah. Do you
It's
feel like, as the person with cancer, do you feel the pressure to survive so that you don't let people down?
I kind of felt like when I was going through cancer, not it was like a little easier than it is now in a way. Because I feel like when I was going through cancer, I didn't have time to process. It was just like, boom, like I want to survive. I'm gonna survive. And then I just did what I had to do. And then once you like process everything, it's a little harder. But I did feel pressure, but it was never like no, I didn't feel like I was ever gonna die. That's why I didn't feel the pressure because I was like so confident. I was so confident in my health. I was in the best shape before my diagnosis. I was trying to stay active during treatment, just like walking and lifting light weights. So I always felt like alive. There was only one point really where I felt like I was gonna die, and that was two
Mhm.
years ago when I was in the hospital with the GVHD. And at that point, I did feel that. But with cancer, no. But with GVHD, yes.
You did. Okay. Yeah.
So with
It's
GVHD,
interesting. Yeah. Because I asked that, it's like, how do we balance? I asked that because I know, as someone with cancer, there is that, right? And the better my labs get, then sometimes I think, oh crap, if the next lab is bad, right? It's like a roller coaster, and the people I love are like, oh, they're happy, oh, they're sad, right? And even though I have no control over their emotions as someone with cancer, and as a mom watching someone, it's like, how do we balance hope and reality?
But
How
right.
do we?
that is so funny what you just said, because that's another conversation is when things are going well. I think sometimes when you're in this world, this cancer world, you're like afraid the other shoe is going to drop. And I think sometimes, at least I see with caregivers, and I do see it with survivors too,
Yeah.
is that when things are going well, there's almost a fear of being happy because it's like, I don't want to get too happy because I think the other shoe is going to drop. And what if my labs next time and my next scan is not as good? Or what if I relapse? Or what if this happens? And I think that that happens. I've seen that a lot with caregivers, that they get afraid to be joyful. Or the other side is your loved one that you care about so much is suffering. And then something happens and you're smiling, you're happy. And I'm a really optimistic, happy, like by nature. Like that's
Yeah.
just, I was kind of born that way. And I know sometimes I'd be in the hospital and I'd be like down the hall and I'm with Michael and pushing him in the wheelchair. And I'm like, singing. And then I think, oh, he doesn't, I mean, I think it helped him. But then sometimes I think, gosh, I need to not be happy. I need to like not be so happy. We're in a horrible situation. We've been in the hospital for months. Like, what right do I have to be happy? And I think there's that side too. But
Hmm.
what you're saying is, I could be very sad and heartbroken that Michael was going through this.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I could still have joy that I saw a nurse that smiled at me or that came in our room and we played music together or we danced or whatever. So I think sometimes we have guilt about having joy when we're supposed to be having pain. But you can have both. And it can also be sometimes that, right now, Michael, his graft versus host disease, it is more stable. I mean, he's in treatment. It doesn't like go into remission. It's not like cancer. It's a little bit different, but it's stable. And
Hmm.
so he's joyful. But then there's also days that he's like, crap, this sucks. And it's okay that he can be happy that he's doing better, but also this does still also suck. So I
Yeah.
think it goes both ways, don't have guilt for having the joy and don't have guilt if you're doing well for having the pain. Like we
Yeah.
definitely have both in our hearts. And I think that sometimes we feel like we have to do one or the other. And there is survivor's guilt. You know, Want a real confession is so my husband passed away 8 years ago yesterday from
Mm-hmm.
when we're filming this. And last night I was talking to my daughter on the phone, and there's a moment that Michael started crying and he's like, why did he die? And I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that feeling too. I'm like, why my husband and why not me? And then when Michael got cancer, oh my gosh, someone else that I love. And that's hard too. Sometimes you're like, gosh, two people in my life, and there's survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
But
So I'd love to hear how each of you make sense of that. How do
I
you
don't
make sense of that?
honestly, I don't know. I just feel like in a way it makes sense to me because my father did what he had to do with his life. Like he was with my mom, he had kids, he raised us till I was 14 years old, which was not old enough to lose him, but
Right.
he did like enough. In a way, it was justified because he wasn't a baby. He lived a life, he did a lot of beautiful things. And I feel like if I were to pass away when I was 19, I would have been like, I mean, any age is too early to lose cancer, but
Right.
I try to make sense of it and tell myself, okay, like I at least knew him, I at least had those years with him. And that's the way that I try to look at it.
but
Yeah.
it's hard at any age. We know 2-year-olds that have
Yep.
passed away. Michael was treated. He had his bone marrow transplant in a pediatric hospital. So we became very close with
Hmm.
families that we know multiple babies that have passed away. And when I say babies,
Yeah.
I'm like, no, and that those toddlers, infants, we know young adults his age. His last hospital admission, there was a guy that we were friends with, walked down the hall together, passed away. We
Yeah.
know many now that have passed away. And I think that we don't know the why.
Yeah.
I think we don't know the why. And I think that personally, I made a shirt that says there is no why because I'm like, I have to let go of the why, but that doesn't mean
Yes.
you can't make a purpose.
Right.
I mean that you go, it's all a shit show. I don't think
Right.
it's that. I think it's we don't know the why. There is no why, but we can make sense of it like, okay, you are alive. I am alive. So let's let's be purposeful in our living. Let's be mindful in our living. And I think what Michael was saying about his dad, it's more that this is my message to my children, because I'm like, I don't want them to walk around going, my dad died.
Yeah.
I want them to say, my dad lived.
I love
I
that.
agree.
My
Yeah.
dad lived. He had 3
Yeah.
beautiful children and a wife. He had a
Yeah.
beautiful career. He lived. Okay, for my taste, not long enough, but he lived.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I think sometimes, even in those 2-year-olds, we have to think, okay, what was that gift?
Yeah.
Maybe the gift was shorter, but more intense.
Yeah.
And we don't know the why, but I've seen so many people make purpose. And I think that that's beautiful. And it's hard as
Yes.
humans. Sometimes we have to go through all that. It seems like the pain and the suffering, the people that I feel like I respect the most, look at you, we bonded with you immediately, but it's because we share a lot of suffering.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you don't wish, as a mom, as a caregiver, I don't wish suffering upon any of my kids. Every
Of
mom in
course.
the world will go, I just want my kid to be happy, but
Of
not
course.
really. Because if they were always happy, they would not be very interesting, wise people, right?
That's true. Yeah.
I,
Seriously. Like we look at Michael, I'm like, he's 22 years old. My God, the wisdom, like just being and doing what we all did together and having the young people that were in that group. I was like, geez, these
Yeah.
guys are amazing, right? Just so young and worldly and so much more wisdom than, someone who hasn't had the struggles. Yeah, there's definitely it's a life-changing experience if you allow it, right? And I think
Allow
I
it.
think we
Yeah.
get hung
yeah,
up on that why, like what you said, the why. And I'll often tell people, like, you got to let that shit go. You
yeah,
will never know why. And it won't even be why because I had BRCA1 or 2. No, because some people have that and they didn't get cancer. Some people got exposed to radiation and they didn't get cancer. Like the why isn't important. And I think, it can be maddening when people say everything happens for a reason
yeah.
versus you can find a reason if you want to,
Yes.
right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. That I believe that 100%. I
Yeah.
believe 100%.
Yeah, because we're just like, I don't know and I think sometimes we just have to embrace, we don't know, you
Yeah.
know? I don't know why people have different journeys, but the important thing is, and I see a lot of people suffer with this a lot or being a lot of fear for their own life, right? So much fear losing life that they're not living life,
Oh,
so much fear of cancer taking their life, but they're not enjoying their life. And like you both said, when always going to be too soon. And that's a question I ask when people are so afraid of dying. I'm like, well, when will it be okay? Give me a
yeah.
number. When's it going to be okay? Right. Like I
Yeah.
used to say 82, and I said, but I want to rethink it when I get to 82. I want to have a clause that says I get to rethink it.
My mom is 83, so let's rethink it.
Same. Right. My mom turned 83. I was like, well, hold on. Maybe I want 83. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I, you just said so many things that were just like perfect. I agree. It is so hard. I remember when Michael was first diagnosed, I heard that so much. Everything happens for a reason. And I know, and it's hard, and you want to be like, people are saying that with the goodness of their hearts. But sometimes you're just like, I love what you just said. It's not that it happens for a reason, but we can make a reason. What I was saying, we can make a purpose.
Yes.
And there should be like a book. I'm I'm putting this in a book. I have like a list. I joke with my cancer, like the caregivers. I'm like, I always make them tell me the things that they hear that people really shouldn't say.
Oh, let's hear them. Let's hear some of the popular ones from you guys
Oh gosh.
because I love these.
Positive, stay strong. Everything happens for a reason. You got the good cancer.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many. Don't eat sugar.
Yeah.
Oh my
All the
God.
things.
There's a lot of things people say.
There's so many.
I mean, it comes from
But
usually a good place,
it
so
does come
I
from a
don't
good place.
take really offense to it. But I sometimes do take offense when people just blatantly that I don't know, just say no sugar, cut out this, do this. Like that's annoying. Like everything else I understand, but like when people just comment and I post someone I don't even know, it's just like eat 2 tablespoons of honey and ginger
Some
and
juice
yeah, and
and
then like some crazy thing that like is not gonna help. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do too, like you said. I mean, I think it's people come from a good place, and there needs to be like a book on educating people on how to talk to other people with cancer. Don't
100%.
immediately hear their diagnosis and go, "Oh, I know someone who died from that." I'm like, "Oh, awesome." That's
Yes,
great to
Yeah.
know. Thanks.
yes, yes. Or I know someone that did this and they were cured. And that's what
Exactly.
too. And it's always kind. And it does come from a good place, but it's still hard to hear for sure.
Yeah,
But
it
um,
is.
but there is so much wisdom. I agree. When you said that before, so much wisdom that comes from going through hardships if you want to
If
embrace
you
it.
want. Yeah. So like I'll ask you guys, and I think about this and I hear this, and it depends, I think, too, on the stage of cancer where you're at. That people say it's a gift, or people say, gosh, I wouldn't be living the life I live now if I didn't have cancer. And I think wherever you are, like I could say that, right? I could say I would not be doing what I'm doing in my life now had I not had cancer, because I mean, why would I? I wouldn't be doing it, right? And then I would say, wow, so many blessings have come from the fact that I've learned so much. I've changed so much. I look at life so differently. And then if you said, so would you do it again? No, I wouldn't do it again. Why would I have cancer again if I had a choice? No. What do you
No,
guys say? How does that sit with you?
had a choice to have cancer. That's tough. Honestly, I would like to see how my life would be different if I didn't get cancer. That's the only reason why. But I feel like it has made me a way better person and taught me so much. But again, like I wouldn't want to go through all this again consciously, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, you'd
But
better be windsurfing than going to the hospital for another treatment, huh?
right, but I love the purpose I have. Like I hate
Yeah.
the things I have to deal with, but I love the purpose I have. It's like nothing else I felt before. So
Right.
it's hard to wish it away. But I would have loved to have gone through this and then like went back to completely healed physically. That would have been
Yeah.
cool. But that's not
Right.
gonna happen for me. So, you know,
Yeah.
That's part of the
Yeah.
cancer journey. I think it changes you forever. It
Yeah.
changes you in mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. And I mean, it's changed my family, of
Yeah.
course. Changed my family first from my husband and then through Michael. And I have heard you say before, someone asked you, and you're like, no, I wouldn't change it. So I was
I
interested.
wouldn't change it, but like if I had a chance to be completely
Yeah.
healthy, I would take it.
Okay, I get
Yeah.
you.
That
I know. And as a mom, when you say that, I think, oh my God, that I didn't have to see him suffer so much, that he didn't have to suffer so much. But then again, he is like one of the most beautiful beings that I've ever
Hmm.
met. And the honest truth is, I'm sure it was there all along, but you
Oh,
to
sure.
get to that, you have to take away all the layers, and it maybe cancer, it takes away those layers, whatever
Yes.
we go through, right? And
Yes.
I think that sometimes in life, we just want to like add things to make things better. But I
Hmm.
think that cancer, it like strips you.
it's like in
Yes.
Shrek when they talk about the onion layers.
Oh
That's what I was gonna that totally reminds me of it. It's like an onion. Ogres have layers. Yeah.
my about
Yeah.
Shrek, but
We watched Shrek like last week, so
it's
that's
so it's true.
I love Shrek.
It's true.
yeah.
There are layers, but it's not just that. It's like, the thing about like the chipping away and then the inside, there like
Yeah. I
it
really
just
feel it is. It's like getting back to your authentic self, like really getting in touch with your spirit, because in society, I mean, we're conditioned to fit in. We're conditioned to behave certain ways. We're conditioned that this is acceptable and this isn't. And, maybe as a kid, you're too loud and you want to put a show on every night at dinner for everybody. And people are like, don't put on so many shows, sit down, be quiet, right? And when we have cancer, we start to go like, that didn't feel right to me. And we do start to peel back those layers and start to be comfortable with who we really are. Right. I mean, I think that's a part of the healing process. But I'd love to hear. So I say when we go through, oftentimes we create a protective barrier. So the person who has cancer doesn't want to say too much or reveal too much because their loved ones might worry. The loved one doesn't want to ask too much, doesn't want to say too much because they don't want the cancer patient to think I'm giving up hope or I'm scared or I'm worried. And so I think we want to protect each other, but in doing so, we build distance between each other, right? So how do you guys deal with that? Do you think that as a mother and son, are you able to be more transparent with each other because of this experience? Or do you have a protective barrier? Or
There's no
both?
There's
No
there's no
barrier.
barrier, and I have to say it's so funny you bring this up because someone messaged me about this the other day on Instagram. They told me that they have cancer and that they don't want to tell their family like how sad they are and how hard it is because they don't want to seem weak because of
Yeah,
their family. So I was like, you have to tell them because then they can help you and they can support you. And that's something that we live by is like telling each other what we're going through. And my mom is just so resilient and strong that I know that whenever I'm going through something, even if she's struggling, she'll be able to help me. And then we also help each other. So we're very communicative about everything. We talk about everything. And
that's
like,
a blessing.
we're just
Yeah.
just very lucky that we're able to be so honest and vulnerable. I think that's what losing my father and him passing away
Mm.
at a young age did to us because it made us just like realize how short life is and how important our family is. So we never had any like fights between us. We always said I love you whenever we would not see each other. Like we'd leave and I always say I love you, I love you, I love you, or I don't see you for a few days. I'm always texting, I love you, I love you. Like we're always telling each other how much we love each other and just like remembering that family is everything and we can always communicate with each other.
I love that. And I love that you use the word weak because I do hear that all the time. It's like, I don't want to be weak. I don't want to be weak. I think it takes so much strength to be vulnerable, don't you? I
Yeah.
mean, to
Brene
just lay
Brown.
your heart out on the table,
To me it's
that's
easy
not easy.
now. Now it's
What's
easy
that?
to it's like easy to me now.
It's
Yeah,
easy now.
but I
Yeah.
think that's
But
because
only
of
to my mom. Like to other people, it's like I don't know. Like I can be
I think
vulnerable.
you have to be careful, right? You have to be
Yeah, yeah,
conscious of who you're talking to. But I do think, like in a lot of families, and that's what we're talking about, that whole family dynamic is it's okay. Like you can let those walls down. And I think when I was first diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, my youngest son was 20. It was during lockdown, also 2020. And he was 20, 21, and he was struggling with depression at the time. And I was really scared. Like, can I tell him this? Will it be too much? Will he be able to process it? And then the same thing was like, God forbid, because we're so close that he finds out I'm holding back something from him and not trusting him, right? All these thoughts in my head of like, is it okay? Is it not okay? And ultimately, of course, I did tell him and all my children. And I told him I was worried. I was worried to tell you, and here's why. And I was just honest about it. And he just said, Mom, it makes me feel so much stronger already. Like, if you can deal with this, I can deal with depression. I'll figure this out. You're going to figure yours out. I'm going to figure mine out. And we're not going to hide anything from each other. And it was like,
oh,
cool. Right. And I think when we let those barriers come down, like it can be so much more than this like Netflix original horror series we build in our head. Right. Yeah.
true.
Like it can be so much better if we give it a chance. Yeah.
I I love that. And but it is, I mean, for us, I don't want to say it's been easy, but I think it was like that was one of the gifts of my husband passing away, was that we were a close family, I will say, but it definitely brought us closer. And I always joke that my kids didn't have their bad teenage years because when he died, they were 12, 14, and 16.
Mm,
And I kind of joke they didn't have bad teenage years because of that, but they didn't. I mean, not that they were perfect. I'm not going to say that, but because we were so close, I think we had this communication. And I've seen families that have struggled going through cancer and separated. And I think it's because exactly what you said, we get afraid. And it's maybe because we have good hearts because we want
yeah.
to protect the other people. But I think that that is a big lesson. And I think that is like, if I were going to give a message, yeah, be vulnerable, share with the people you love. Maybe not everyone. And we do share on social media, but no, not everyone needs to share on social media.
Right.
If it feels good, yes. But I think that everyone needs someone, that you can
Yeah.
share with. You need someone you can trust and you can speak with. I think it's important. And we're lucky. I mean, I always say I'm lucky because he's my kid and I love him, but
Of
I also
course.
really like him. Like we like being together, thank God.
Yeah.
Because we're
Yeah.
together a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like my kids. I feel very blessed in that
Yeah.
sense.
When we go through cancer, we are faced with lots of shitty decisions, right? It's not like, here's a hard choice and here's a good one, right? They're like, well, that sounds horrible and that sounds horrible. Okay. How do you deal with the mother-son dynamic? I mean, you're an adult, Michael. It's your decisions, your body, it's your life, but he's your kid, and don't want to worry mom and all that. When it comes to making and deciding between really crappy decisions, how does the influence work?
What do you mean decisions?
Well,
So if you have to decide on a treatment,
Okay, like the treatment decisions.
yeah, food, treatment, life, anything, like you're gonna live this way, and mom's like, I don't think so. Or you're not going to do it. And she's like, no, you should think, right? Like, how does that work? And because I think this is important, right? Again, I think it goes back to protecting people.
yeah.
Or I have seen many people say, I'm doing this and I don't want to. But my husband, my mother, my sister, my child says they're so afraid they want me to do it. And it doesn't feel right to me, but I've got to do it anyway. How does that work?
Yeah, we're pretty much on a similar page with most of my life decisions. I think she's like the best person. Whenever I have like an issue or a dilemma in my head, she really helps me get over it and like stay grounded. I'm always thinking there's something like I want to do or something I think I should do. And with social media as well, and like the future, I get stressed. I'm like, I need to be doing so much more. There's so much more I need to do. And she always like calms me down. It's like, okay, you're doing enough. Like,
Yeah.
I think that the treatment decisions, we've pretty much been very similar with, you know, we never disagreed really, except for one point when I was very depressed and I wanted to stop treatment because I was so sad.
Yeah.
And I was in the hospital for so long at that time. But then I got a lot of help and I got better, and that made me want to continue treatment. So there was like a point where I was very down, and she had to like kind of not force me to do treatment, but kind of keep me like, we have to keep going, Michael, and you're going to be okay. You can do this.
It wasn't
Yeah.
forced, but there was a point. It's true. And when I think about treatment, we've been really blessed because we have had, I, now I know how lucky, I didn't realize how lucky we were, but in talking with other caregivers, other cancer survivors, I realized how blessed we've been that his whole team has been very involved. Plus, we always had, not always, but about a year after diagnosis, we had a palliative with us. And palliative care does not mean end of life, but it does mean helping you with comfort. It means helping you make decisions. It means bringing doctors together in a room to talk. So I think that we've had a lot of open discussions with doctors and with palliative so that we always ended up on the same page. I think
Mhm.
there was in the very beginning, the treatments were so aggressive, but I think both of us just knew that he just had to do it. It just
Yeah.
felt, we both felt it was the right thing. And there was that one point when he was like, I want to go into hospice, like dad, because my husband ended up in hospice. And
Uh-huh.
I remember he was sitting and I was like, Michael, can I make a plea bargain with you? Is that
Mm.
you sit like 2 weeks? Because he just started new medication. I'm like, give it 2 weeks. And I'm like, and if it doesn't work, I promise you, we'll look into hospice. And I did negotiate with him. It was the
Yeah.
one time I want to say we disagreed, but I could just see there was hope. And at that point, he had no hope. And I was like,
Yeah.
just let me give him a little bit. But it's true, we've been lucky that we really have had doctors that have given us also options,
Yeah.
said, this medication has this side effect. And Michael will be like, I don't want to deal with that. And we've really been focused on, because he's been through so much, we've been really focused on quality of life.
Yeah.
I remember when he started going out with his girlfriend a year and a half ago, in my heart, my mama heart was like, he's immunosuppressed. He's taking immunosuppressants and he's going to go on a date and he's going to kiss a girl. I just
You're like,
know it.
no kissing.
And my heart was like this, but I was like, you got to do it. Like,
Yeah.
what are we going to do? You can't just live your life in a bubble either.
No.
And so I think I've had to like let go of those kinds of fears. But as far as treatment, we've been, and even that, I was on the same page with him. I just had some mama fears that I had to go,
Yeah.
okay, he's got to live his life though, you know?
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. I was going to ask you because from a mother child perspective, like Michael, when you think about your life and the importance of like living and having future plans and like, vacations on or, adventures you want to go on, do you ever think about this is great. I need to do this. This is just life. Or do you think, oh, I shouldn't do that because I'm immunosuppressed? Does fear hold you back? And I was going to ask you the same thing, Ashley. Do you watch him and just go like, oh God, don't do it. Or do you say, get out there and live?
With GVHD and my necrosis, it's really hard to do a lot of things that would probably scare my mom or scare myself because I can't really, I would be if I could, I would be like surfing and doing that type of stuff, but I can't really get any sun, and then my bones are all messed up. I just had my knee replaced. So it's like there's never really been a thing that I did that was like so scary, and I have to, take risks with certain things, like we travel sometimes,
Yeah.
but there's never really anything I do that's like gonna be like, oh my God, he's so scary, he shouldn't do that, because I know myself. Like I'm not gonna go and try to play basketball or go in the ocean and surf with my knees like this, because I know myself and I know my limits, but I wish there kind of was, but I can't right now.
Yeah.
I've had
Yeah.
conversations about quality of life. Like there was a moment that after the bone marrow transplant and when he was really immunosuppressed, he couldn't see friends. It was Zoom or maybe one at a time with a mask at a distance. But that was pretty much black and white. And then it wasn't black and white. It got gray.
Hmm.
But we did make a decision, especially after everything he went to, when we had that conversation about hospice, and we were like, we talked with palliative care. And that was one
Hmm.
of the things that we were like, you know what? You gotta live.
You
You
gotta
have
live.
to.
Yeah.
And so we, like he said, we don't do crazy things, but we've gotten on an airplane before and
Yeah.
we started doing things. And I think it's important. And he goes out with his girlfriend, and sometimes there's a small bar that there's not a million people, but they'll
Mhm.
go
Yeah.
play pool and, you know, he can get
Yeah.
some drinks, but he's also going to go and have fun.
Yeah.
So it's good too. So we do, I mean, I totally trust him, and he is 22 now. He's an adult,
Yeah.
but of course we live together and I
Yeah.
do anything for him, but I also
Of
trust
course.
him. And
Yeah. That's so
you have to
important.
live, you have to live.
Yeah,
You have
yeah, I love that message. I know it cracks me up because we live close to the beach, and there's a place that does lots of cover band concerts right here on the beach. And I'm an 80s girl. I love Van Halen. And so we were at a Van
Oh,
Halen
Nice.
concert,
yes.
and I was like, yeah, and I'm kind of jumping, and my husband literally put his hands on my shoulders, and I go, what are you doing? And he's like, you can't jump. I'm like, okay, I'm jumping. It's Van Halen.
Okay, old
And the song
folks.
is Jump. We're jumping, right?
That's funny.
Yeah. It's like the people who love you, right? They're like, don't do too much. And it's so
That is
important to be like, it's okay. We got to trust a little bit, right? You have to be able to live. Yeah, so
do. And
important.
that is where balance does have its place. That is where I do believe that balance does have its place. The balance of taking some risks, living life, and still making sure you don't put yourself in danger. He's not going to do something crazy. I mean, maybe,
Mm-mm.
but
I don't
no,
think so.
he doesn't want to put his life at risk
No.
either.
Yeah.
So
So, what else? What have I not asked you guys about that you would like to know, that you would like to talk about, or that a message you would like people to know? It's like, if you're out there and you're a mom, if you're someone with cancer, and here's what you could do for your mom, or just overall anything. I don't care.
Well, I'll just say that if you're someone with cancer and you need someone to talk to, you could definitely DM me on Instagram. I probably will. And I do get a lot of DMs, but usually answer the ones that talk about when someone messages me about cancer. So please reach out to me. I lead a support group. My mom leads a support group for caregivers as well. And there is so much support out there. You are not alone, and we are there for you.
So important. And you know what, Michael? That's so important too, because sadly, so many more young people are being diagnosed with cancer,
Yeah.
and it is a different experience. I mean, I was 48 when I was first diagnosed, but I have clients that were in their late 20s, that were in their early 30s, and it is a different experience when you're in a different stage of life, right? And I do think that at any stage of life, it's important to be able to connect with someone else who's young and can identify and understand what that means. Yeah, thank you for that. That's great. And you know what? I'm gonna come back and ask you that question too, Ashley, but because you've said a couple of times, Michael, about get help, get help. How do you guys feel about getting coaching, getting therapy? Are you big believers in that? What would you say to people? Because I
Yeah.
think get more help. Like people don't want to get help, right?
get help.
Yeah.
Don't do it on your own.
I have therapy Thursday. So yes.
Therapy Thursday. I love it.
Well,
Yeah.
no, no,
Why is
therapy,
it important to you?
on therapy
Why do
every
you
Thursday.
think it's
I have it this Thursday. Oh, it's
okay?
just important. It's just important to talk to somebody who's like a professional. And also my mom is my therapist as well. I just think it's so important. Like you have a problem and it's good to get other people's perspectives on it, and it's good to get a fresh view. I think the most important thing about therapy is we have these problems in our head and we look at these problems and we think they're such big problems, but when you tell it to someone, they are not in your position and they can offer you the advice that you need to hear. And
Yeah.
that's the thing my mom's been telling me too, is like, what would you tell yourself if you were your friend? Like if I was like, oh, I'm having this problem, and then my friend gave me this piece of advice, you have to tell that to yourself. Like you have to be your own therapist sometimes, but it's very important to have a therapist as well.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And like talk to yourself, Michael,
Like
like
you
you were
talk to a
talking to
friend.
someone that you love.
Yeah,
I
Yes.
think sometimes we're very hard on ourselves. And that goes for
Yeah.
anyone, not just someone in the cancer world, that goes for everyone.
everyone.
I
Absolutely.
think that sometimes he's like, "Ugh," hard on himself because physically he can't do the things he did before.
Hmm.
And that's hard when you were an athlete and you were training to do something that you can't do anymore. So I think sometimes you get so hard on yourself and then, but maybe I should be doing more of this. And I'm like, you're good.
Yeah.
But t- tell that to yourself too.
Yeah.
I agree with him and you. I think getting either coaching, being in a support group, a therapist, I think sometimes it's challenging in our healthcare system to be able to afford a therapist. And I think that is a challenge for some people, not for everyone, but for some people.
Yeah.
But I do know there's so many free support groups.
Yeah.
So, and I think it does help. And so often it's like the irony is that when we're going through these things, I think sometimes to protect ourselves, we do close the
Hmm.
doors and we
Hmm.
do isolate because maybe we want to protect other people or protect ourselves. But the irony is we really need to be doing the opposite so often. And again, not to share with the whole world, but I
Yeah.
think that it really is important to know you're not alone because I think I hear that from caregivers all the time. I'm alone. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm alone. And you're not,
Yeah.
definitely not. There's people out there, there is support. And I know, just like Michael said, I mean, I do the same thing. You do the same thing. You're coaching people. So there is support out there. Sometimes
Yeah.
you have to reach your hand out, and that's like scary, being
Yeah.
vulnerable. But
Yeah.
no, but once you take that step, I see so many people like in my group that once they take that step and share, they're like, oh my gosh, other people have been through this. Okay. And it gives you hope. And I
Yeah.
think hope is there's a big difference between, depression and sadness and grief.
Hmm.
Sadness and grief you can still have hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important too to vet things. A lot of times I hear people say, "Oh, I don't do groups because I was in this Facebook group and everybody was, saying terrible, sad things. I don't do groups." And I think people need to know like there are groups that are out there specifically to say there's more options, there's more hope. You're not alone. Let's move forward. And it's not just a bitch session, it's actually support, right?
I
Like
have
this is
heard
how you live.
I have heard that too. I had a caregiver recently join my group and she's like, I never wanted to join another group because I was in a bitch session.
Yeah.
And I was like, I get that. Like, I wouldn't want to be in that either. That does
No.
not. But for
Yeah.
some people, it might help. For some people, so nothing against that. If that helps you, cool.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think supporting each other is a big thing, but there is support. I do believe there's support.
Yeah. Well, you
Yeah.
guys, of course, I'm going to put the links to all your social media
Thank you.
and, for definitely people reach out to you guys and Ashley, especially, I think there needs to be more talk about caregivers, whether you're a caregiver with cancer, whether you're caring for someone with cancer, and also in my kind of population and a lot of women I deal with, most people get diagnosed with breast cancer over the age of 50, the majority. So a lot of my clients are caregivers for elderly parents
No.
while they're going through cancer, right? So that is a big thing that I see very often too. So I think in any fight, like we can never just look and go, oh, I'm going through cancer, but it's like you play so many roles and it's important to get support in all of those roles. And I do see like oftentimes caregivers almost it's kind of like an invisibility cloak sometimes, right? Because it's like a pregnant couple, right? And all the attention is on the mom because she's pregnant. The dad's, well, my life's about to be turned upside down too,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
I
Yeah,
totally,
so
I
it
totally, and
is important.
there are so many facets, and that is a challenge with being a caregiver, I think, so often. Is maybe
For
you're dealing
sure.
with your own health plus the health of someone else. Maybe you do have children, whatever, a relationship. It's a challenge.
It is, yeah. So thank you for being there to support people, and thank both of you. And this has been an
Of course.
absolute pleasure, as I knew it would be. Thank you so much for making the time for this.
Oh my gosh,
Of
love
course.
talking.
Thank you.
You are just a beautiful, shining light and amazing coach and a blessing. So grateful we met you.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, well, that is a wrap. And I hope, no, I know that you love them as much as I love them. And I hope that you can take some little nugget away from that that inspires you and supports you and helps you feel like you're not alone in this world, in this experience. And, what I love about our conversation is just that connection, that I think that message that everything's okay, that feeling all the feels is okay. Good days are okay. Bad days are okay. Whatever you're going through, it just is what it is. And to be in that moment and accept it for what it is and know that there's other people who are there with their arms open, willing to help and support and love and care for you through it is everything. All right. I'll talk to you again soon. Until then, be good to yourself. Take care.